Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden is the newest adventure for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. But is it a frosty success or a slushy mess? Let's take a look in this 5e in 5 minutes. Icewind Dale is the name of the northern region of the Forgotten Realms. It's just above the Sword Coast. Pretty much everyone who lives there lives in a smaller region of the map where there are 10 small towns, cleverly named 10 Towns. For those of you looking for Drizzt, this is set around about 100 years after the Drizzt novels, and there's passing references in there at most. Each of the 10 towns can be your starting point for the campaign, each of them having their own starting quest. This is probably the first thing I really noticed with this campaign is it's very sandboxy to start off with. Like I say, pretty much any of the 10 can be where you start from. There's 2 that the story recommends, but other than that, you can pretty much start where you like, and there isn't really much reason for the player characters to really push forward, really, other than sort of wanting to push forward, really. So you may have to try and come up with some ways that you can sort of push the narrative forward after they've done a few of the original quests. The other thing I will say is that obviously some of the 10 towns are bigger than others, but pretty much all of them just have 2 or 3 locations and 2 or 3 NPCs detailed, whereas I would maybe rather have seen a few more from some of the larger towns and maybe just 1 or 2 from some of the smaller ones. But even still, they're all pretty nicely mapped out, and some of the quests are really quite fun. My favourite one being a mutant moose attacking one of the towns. Chapter 2 sees the narrative become a little bit more straightforward as you start to try and unravel the mysteries of the Frostmaiden. One of the most interesting aspects here are the weather conditions. There's possibilities of blizzards, ice sheets, frost and other things that can affect your travel time, and also the twilight hours of the area as well. The Frostmaiden spends her days flying around and creating an aurora borealis that only lights up the place for 4 hours a day, the rest of the time being in darkness. I don't want to say too much about the final campaign other than that there are lots of maps. It's really quite well laid out towards the end and pretty linear, although the option is there to not actually go and kill the Frostmaiden, which is quite a nice touch, I think, tackling the issue another way. A couple of other nice features of the campaign include a list of secrets that your player characters can take on board when they're being created to add a little bit of mystery and mystery? I think I made a word up there. A little bit of intrigue and mystery. Mystery, I like it. It also comes with a load of new monsters as well, and some old classics returning too. My favourite being these little ceremorphs, which is when a mind flayer has attempted to take over a gnome and it's not gone particularly successful. How cute, look at this little baby mind flayer. Obviously most of the creatures have got a bit of a frosty nature to them. There's also a lot of sort of natural creatures in there as well. Seals, whales, all that kind of thing. There is a thing in here about some of the animals being able to talk due to a druid spell, I believe, which is kind of interesting. But there might be a little too many of those going on. Pretty any animal that you encounter in this thing can talk to you, which is a bit tricky, you know, even down to the hares and the smaller animals. So who are these books for? I'll tell you who they're not for, and that's new GMs. The first chapter is really open-ended, to the point where you might even find yourself getting into a couple of dead ends without a real clear way of how the party needs to move forward. Now, an experienced GM might relish in the more sandbox nature of this, but if you're looking for a straight-up linear narrative, then you're going to have to look somewhere else. My main issue with Rime of the Frostmaiden is it doesn't live up to that modern horror scenario that the advertising campaign said that it was going to have. The bitter landscape, the darkness, and the setting really do imbibe a feeling of terror, but every time it builds, it gets knocked back down again with some ridiculous 5th edition wackiness, like 3 kobolds in a coat, or there's even one of those singing Billy Bass things. There's even a sentient one of them. What this book is great for, though, is DMs who are already running homebrew campaigns or are looking towards running a homebrew campaign, as pretty much you can use the first start of this book as a smorgasbord of places to start off with. Pretty much any of the 10 towns will create a great first starting village for a D&D campaign. You can either keep that frosty setting, or you can change the weather and a couple of other features, and you could stick them pretty much anywhere. Most of the monsters are really great. There's a little bit too much of a lean towards kobolds, but now they're cold, and these sentient animal things that they've got going on. But overall, it's a pretty solid story. Certainly isn't going to go down in the history books, but certainly not one that I've regretted picking up either. Of course, it's available at the Game Chamber. There'll be a link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, give us a like. It really does help out. And keep it here with a subscribe for more from the Game Chamber.